All right, guys, I think we have this figured out. We're going to try this one more time. So, all the way from Uganda, ladies and gentlemen, Johnny Long. All you, brother.
Hey, thanks, Rob. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
That's a yes.
All right, cool. Well, here we go. Thanks for coming to Hack3rcon and for your support, you guys. It's awesome to see this much support from the community. I wish I could be there with you guys, but the cost of tickets is so outrageous that we figured you guys use the money to some other cool stuff. So thanks a lot for coming. So I have two goals with this talk. These are the two goals. Basically, what I want to do is I want to say thank you. I want to say, I'm appreciative of folks like you that are in the community. And the second goal is I'm going to try to give some advice. So let's get started. Most of you are pretty familiar with the stories of Hack3rcon Uganda. This slide shows a picture of my wife, in the upper left. She's the one on the right, because you can't figure that out. In 2006, she went to Uganda on a short-term trip for our church. And basically, she came back with pictures like this. This little guy in the picture, this is Colin. And he lived in basically a house that looked pretty much just like this. It was a mud hut made out of sticks and, just real basic materials. And this was the happiest kid that I had ever seen. And it was pretty amazing to me that this kid was so happy because he basically lost his parents. He was living with his grandmother. He didn't even have a stitch of clothes on in this picture, which is kind of why we took the picture that way. But the point is, this kid was just amazingly happy. And I was kind of at a point in my life where I had everything going for me and I was miserable. So I felt like, I really got to check this out. I got to know what it is to make a kid like so happy. And so I planned on going back to Uganda with Jen in 2007. And we did it just like a standard missions trip, where basically you email your friends or, send letters. And since I didn't really have too many, IRL friends, I sent out a bunch of emails and I blogged. And hackers paid for our trip to Uganda, East Africa, in 2007, which was a pretty amazing thing. I didn't expect a whole lot of response, but the trip was fully funded back in 2007. And what we did during that trip was I worked on computer systems, a lot like the ones you see in this picture. Just unbelievable garbage that had been dumped on Africa and was sitting in a corner rotting because nobody knew how to work on it. The two computer systems that were working were riddled with viruses. And so I spent a couple of weeks just getting rid of computer viruses and rebuilding computer hardware. But the point was, it was an interesting 2 weeks. I felt pretty good about the work that I did. But at the end of that trip, the organizer of the trip in Uganda pulled us aside and said to me specifically, said, I want to thank you for saving lives. And that really struck me. I was thinking to myself, how is it that I was saving lives? Explained to them that, the computer systems that they were using were used to track orphans and kids that didn't have parents and find ways of getting sponsors for them in the U.S. by sending their photos out on the internet and then tracking the money as it came in because their computers were so jacked up. They couldn't accept any more sponsorships and, they were having trouble tracking their money. And so the work that the kid had these immediate life-changing results. It was the first time in my life that I kind of had that happen to me. And especially in this industry, I was really surprised at that. So I got back to work and back to basically my dream job and tried to find the, save lives button on my computer and basically found it to be missing. But all I could think about was that experience, in my day-to-day job, pen tester and, liquor on doing forensics work and just high-tech job, I found myself thinking more and more about this thinking about Uganda, one of the poorest places on the planet. So the more I thought about that, I tried to do some things that I could and sent money to Uganda and tried to raise awareness. I started talking about visible children in my talks, a group that was supporting basically children that were being abducted in Uganda that just didn't fill that void. So around 2007, I started the group Hackers for Charity. And I thought to myself, how's this going to work? Nobody's going to be interested in helping poor kids. We're a bunch of geeks. But the community absolutely surprised me. I had a PhD recruiter come to me, and his name was Paul, and he said, hey, I can do some PHP and web coding, can you use me? And we said, yeah, of course. We put him to work on a web application that connected sponsors with donors in the U.S. And the result of that was that 61 children were sponsored. And what that meant was that these kids had food, medical care, and an education, not just for them, but for their entire family for a period of 1 year, just as a result of one volunteer stepping forward and spending, about a week amped up on Red Bull, coding a web app for a charity. So that was the first indicator that we kind of had something here, that the community was ready to do some good stuff. So as I kept writing books and being involved in the kind of high-tech world, I came out with No Tech Hacking, which is one of my books that I wrote, and I came up with the idea of bringing all the royalties, all the proceeds from that book back to some of the work that we were doing in Uganda. So I kind of, as a cardinal rule, I started donating all the proceeds from the books into the AOT program in Kenya, which was a little bit different than Uganda because this area in Kenya is obliterated by not just floods, but also droughts, a really crazy combination. And as a result of the royalties from that book, this photo shows a few of the families that we basically food and supplies for. This group here was actually a group of patients who were given drugs by another organization to help, combat, HIV and AIDS in their system. The drugs weren't taking hold because their nutrition was so poor. So we stepped in with the proceeds from the book and came up with this, came up with a pretty sizable donation to help these people out and not just give them food, but also give them hope so that, the medications fit and they would have a chance. That turned into about 1,000 families fed in Kenya through that program. So, of course, one of my goals is to say thank you. So this is the first chance I want to say thank you. So give yourselves a round of applause for that. Now, some interesting things started happening. The group in Kenya took the money that we were sending them and they built that program up a bit. They stopped giving food, and what they did is they started buying acreage and farming supplies. And that was kind of cool because it's sustainable. We didn't just give them food and then it was consumed. We started, the group in Kenya started giving them the ability to farm and garden. And, there were a few hundred acres of land that were purchased through that fund. And we also sent money into Kenya to do something a little more technical. And we bought computers in Kenya and they stood up a computer training center. Some of the other things that we started doing is, you guys kind of know the rest of the story. In 2009, we kind of took the jump and moved to Uganda because the work on the ground in the U.S. was only going so far. We started inviting volunteer teams to join us in Uganda. This slide shows this is a photo of Tim Rosenberg, and the next photo shows Tim and White. Those guys were working with White Wolf at the time. They came out and hauled over equipment, and we set up a computer lab. Also, Monty Hoover came over and worked with us on a program for AOT again, teaching the OLPC. We found that sitting in a closet in Uganda were 100 OLPCs that nobody really knew how to use. And they were afraid to give them to kids because they knew that, you know, they would get stolen or they would get sold. So they just kind of locked them in a closet and nobody had a clue how to use them. So we did a really cool training program. Monty Hoover came out and did some training. And you can see some of our volunteers in this slide, just basically showing teachers and students how to use these computers. It was kind of a missing link in the OLPC project. We also at that time started building computer classrooms inside of existing schools. This slide shows the Rehabit SS school, and this was an interesting school, and I was really excited about it because it turns out that Sergey Brin had actually shelled out money to build this structure. In the process of building this, he did this very quietly. This was not something that was publicized, but he didn't put computer systems in the school, which kind of surprised us. So we were happy to come in and sort of fill that out and put computer systems in that school. Also at that time we took some equipment that was donated, some older equipment, and put it in the St. John's Washington School. Now these programs were basically the result of community donations, either money in the case of the Rehabit school to buy new equipment, or hardware donations, which cost us thousands of dollars in duties and bribes and everything to get over to Uganda. But it was just a combined effort. Also at that time, we set up a training center. We realized that there was a huge need for computer training, that most people in Uganda could not afford computer training because of business. And so we wanted to approach the problem a little bit differently and try to set up a training center where we could just do training computer in lots of places. This was our original staff in this photo, and one of our supporters in Kenya, this is Charles in the red shirt. And just as a side note, Charles is in Nairobi, Kenya, which is only about a 12-hour bus ride from us. And his specialty is pen testing, and he started to get into forensics. That's a very stark contrast to what we have available in Uganda, where, you know, the most advanced people are only getting into networking. They're very basic networking. So, you know, we saw a very advanced city like Nairobi, and we saw the difference in Uganda. And so this training center, you know, this slide here was just something completely different for Uganda. It was bright, it was clean, you know, it was a combination of new and used computers, and the prices were absolutely cheap. And the problem was that people still couldn't afford, you know, the training. So we started offering scholarships to groups that were working in Uganda and offered them training for free to any staff members, whether they were Ugandan or, you know, expats. And at that point, people started coming into the center. This photo shows some street kids. These are basically homeless kids that came in and we put under a scholarship and been taking computer classes for the first time. It was kind of interesting that day with street kids and police officers were both training in our center, you know, at the same time on the same day, which I thought was kind of cool. Also in our training center, we started a Linux users group. You can see in this slide a little sign with the familiar penguin there. And the idea of the Linux users group was pretty straightforward, to introduce people to an operating system that we thought was pretty cool, that was freely available, and show them the benefits of it. And here you can see just a slide presentation that we were given on how to use Linux. Which is a good thing that we did this, because there's absolutely no idea about Linux in Uganda. In fact, this slide here shows their idea of Vim. You think it's a toilet cleaner, not an editor. And this slide here shows about the closest thing that they have to Unix. So the need was there. You know, we saw that the need was there, and that folks were very interested in training. So we kept moving. I'd like to say that at that point, things were pretty easy, but we had been living off of donations at that point for almost a solid year. And we realized that, you know, we need to do something, you know, to sustain ourselves in case the donations stop. So what we did is we started basically a restaurant, an internet cafe restaurant, the photo of the keep. And the idea was, let's provide a place that's safe, that doesn't serve alcohol, that people can come and get a good, American meal and kind of relax. Also provide technical resources, fast internet, things like computer repair, computer services, things like that. So these photos, you can kind of see what the keep looks like. I'd like to say everything was, going great at this point. You remember this classroom that we built? This was our classroom for Google, for Sergey. And I'd like to say that everything was great at this point, but this classroom had declined. And as you can see in the next picture, the conditions in the classroom started getting pretty bad because they weren't maintained. In this photo, you can actually see the water rings on the floor from rain that had gotten in and soaked the computer. The windows had been left open. There was nobody to mop them. They didn't take the time to actually care for the equipment. So this screen, you can see that there's actually mold growing on one of the monitors from water damage, insects. And it was just really, really disheartening. And as it says on this slide, life basically at that point got hard. So let me check point with you guys. I'm kind of monologuing here. Make sure you guys are all there. Are you guys still on there?
We are.
Yeah. We're here.
Gotcha. It's better for me to do that than to find out an hour later, I guess. But at this point, life is a bit tough. I had done an awful lot, in terms of trying to make this project happen. We were low on money. I ran into problems getting a work permit. And at the beginning of this year, I was just done, for a lot of different reasons. I just basically had this attitude where, I just wanted to quit. But thanks to thousands of emails and piles of equipment that came in, volunteers like Rob Nixon and Glenn Eggert, Tim Rosenberg, Marcus Carey, and lots of other people out there that basically said, you know what, we have your back, just, keep at it. And around that point, my work permit came through, making it legal for me to stay in the country, which was a benefit. And that combined with some of the numbers, the number of people that we had training, the number of families that we had fed, the number of employees that we were sustaining, and in a pinch at the keep where we didn't have enough money to pay for staff salaries, we basically used all of our savings to open the keep and keep it running. Somebody came in and basically funded our staff salaries, that we looked at that as a miracle. And on top of that, I had a family that wanted to stay. So again, on behalf of myself, the organization, and everybody that's being helped, thank you for that encouragement. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. So that is basically gets you up to about 2010, beginning of 2011. So here's where we are now. This is Hackers for Care in 2011. On this slide, you can see a very nice picture. This is some of the equipment that we actually pulled out of, unfortunately, that we pulled out of what I can refer to as Sergey's school. We realized, that program wasn't able to maintain the equipment. They basically weren't behind our efforts. And so we started moving that equipment and moving it in smaller pieces into other organizations. So we're being a lot smarter about, where we put our equipment. And, we're partnering with people that really are interested in maintaining it. The next slide shows some of the farmland that we had purchased in Kenya. But the interesting thing about that, as I mentioned, that was not our idea. That was the locals in Kenya that came up with that idea because they understood the culture. And also this photo here with the street kids training, it's great that they're taking computer classes, but the bottom line is they don't have food or somewhere to stay. Computer training doesn't really matter. And it was locals, again, that made that difference, coming together with a group called the Sanctuary to keep these kids in a shelter. So our old model was kind of operating like this. It was Hackers for Charity, trying to reach out to individuals, individuals like Colin, individuals like street kids, or individuals in Kenya that were, couldn't get food or, things like that. And it was fairly effective model to instead focus on organizations. And by supporting organizations with what they do, we can affect a lot more people in a positive way. So that's kind of our new model. A lot of these organizations don't have the for technical support, and hundreds of organizations are existing right here in Jinja and Uganda where we're living, and our goal is to support them. And I find it pretty interesting that it's a bunch of hackers doing that. So the work is not glamorous. We kind of work on some crappy equipment and some crappy conditions, but we're doing work that makes a difference in these organizations. Now, at this point, things seem to be looking up, and I think to say it's all great news from that point, but it really wasn't. The training center that I showed you basically fell apart when I got back from DEF CON through a bunch of really bad things that happened, including employees stealing from us, to the tune of most of our profits that we made in 2010, to folks leaving. We were just in really bad shape, and I posted to the internet that, I didn't want to run the community center, training center as a business anymore. But the real model was to train people. So what I did is I basically said, look guys, here's our expenses. I want to run the training centers completely free. I don't want to charge anybody for computer training, but I need help in funding this thing. And basically belong to that. Rapid7 put out an interesting post saying, or actually, you see this first post here, there was a challenge to Rapid7 from GED here, and he basically says, hey guys, how many black hat parties? $9,420, which is basically what we needed to run our center for each year. And Rapid7 responded. They basically ponied up $5,000 and said, we're looking to the community to match the rest of it, which I thought was pretty. That was more than a publicity stunt. The thing that's really cool though is the community stepped up and the community beat Rapid7's pledge. You guys raised $6,192. So again, that's another big thank you. Now the thing that's so cool about that is that was enough to float the training center for about 14 months. So, for 14 months, I don't have to worry about income. I don't have to worry about people stealing profits. All we do here is focus on getting people trained. So that's a pretty cool thing. So the community does some pretty amazing stuff, and Hack3rcon is another example of that. The Hack3rcon story goes back a ways. Some of you remember that in Louisville, a bunch of folks put together a Metasploit class. A lot of you were involved with that. Iron Geek and Dave Kennedy, there were lots of folks that were involved in pulling this thing together. They basically said, hey, we want to teach a class on Metasploit. We're going to give all the profits to HFC. So, guys like Dave and Martin, Elliot and Kenneth, they basically got together, ran this class. Rob Wickford and Phil Gardner went down, and with 3 or 4 geeks and showed up to make an HFC presence. They took some swag to the event and said thank you, and there was a really cool kind of community air about that. It's really quite excellent. And so as a result of that, the 3 or 4 geeks got together and said, hey, we're going to run a hacker conference for HFC. And when they announced it, a crew from Louisville got there and said, hey, we're going to support you. We're going to present, and we're going to help get the event off the ground. Casey and Vivek from Security 2 blogged about it, and it's pretty much ahead. 100 people showed up. Carla Perez flew in from Puerto Rico to present, and wore his Hack3rcon t-shirt on the All.com podcast, which was really cool. And as a result of that, DerbyCon was born. The Louisville team went on to run DerbyCon, which was a great conference, and they were amazingly supportive of Hackers for Charity. They flew me out from Uganda to speak at the conference, and that conference raised over $12,000 for HFC, which doesn't seem like a ton of money, but when you consider the fact that that's nearly double what we raised at DEF CON, it was about 10 times more people at DEF CON. So it was a really cool conference. DerbyCon was so successful that they kept giving as a result of what had happened at the conference. They topped me up an additional $500 out of their pocket, which was amazing. And then they turned around and donated all of that to Hackers for Charity and Hack3rcon. But it just there. Just about a week ago, we were in pretty dire straits and really needed a sponsor, to make Hack3rcon 2 possible. And DerbyCon came to the rescue, signed up as a platinum sponsor at a level of $2,500 or more. And basically one hacker conference funded another hacker conference in support of Hackers for Charity, which again was an amazing thing. So the question is, what's next? What are we doing going forward? As you can see from this slide, it's no secret that the U.S. is in just as dire straits as places like Uganda. If you look at the unemployment rate, it is skyrocketing. So one of the things that we want to do is we want to focus not just on, we want to focus on other areas that need our help. And we also have this interesting idea about a merge. The idea being that, there's the hacker community, and then there's, members of the hacker community that are actually in the corporate environment, and then there's the straight corporate folks, that seems to be sitting on, lots of power and lots of money, but there are interesting times when they all get together and they work for good. The fundraising for the training center was an example of that. But, when you start thinking, well, how can we leverage that? What happens with these corporates in the hacker community? Well, you get free beer at conferences, which is a good thing. Or in some cases, you get a mess, or in some cases, you get an actual, right through the basket. Well, we sat down and thought about this and decided, well, let's give it a shot. See if we can create a front end for Hackers for Charity. The idea of which is to bring the world and the hacker community together on projects. And we're calling that initiative InfoSec Without Borders, InfoSecWithoutBorders.org. The idea is to help charities engage corporate responsibility programs. Man, I'm seeing lots of typos on my slide. Sorry about that. And also an hacker community project. This is, without a doubt, kind of a form of hacktivism, if you think about it. I mean, by definition, hacktivist is a computer hacker whose activity is aimed at promoting a social and political cause. That's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to pull the best of the hacker community, corporate world together. So take a look at our website. Keep an eye on projects that we're running. Here's some of our backers, some of our entrepreneurs, Rapid7, Backtrack Linux, Public Express, and of course Hackers for Charity are pulling together to make this happen. And for now, sign up on the volunteer list. Get on our list. We have some really cool initiatives coming up. We're working on a mapping project right now that will let you do a map of the needs in your geographical area. Charities that maybe need computers, and we're going to try and match those needs up with people that have success. So the idea will be you'll be able to look at a map and find a charity that has a need, and hopefully be able to find computer systems, or individuals that you could work together with, just jumping to yourself, related to the neighborhood. So that's one of the initiatives that we're working on with InfoSec Without Borders. So as we wrap up a bit, at DerbyCon I had 3 goals. The 3 goals were, first of all, to give advice. Number 2 was to thoroughly embarrass myself, and unfortunately 30 minutes isn't enough time to thoroughly embarrass myself, so I'm going to skip that one. The third one was to say thank you. So the first goal, this is my advice. One of the things I've realized working with Hackers for Charity is we have a tendency in this industry to keep our heads down, go about our work, and kind of get to the end of that, like I did, get to the pinnacle of your career or whatever, and you find out that, that stuff isn't really what matters. What really matters is how you've made a difference in other people's lives. So that's my advice, is to make a difference. And last but not least, I want to say a big thank you to each of you for attending Hack3rcon, supporting Hackers for Charity, and also for the work that you've done in your own community, in the hacker community. It's really a unique environment, and I think we're well on our way to changing the face of hackers and changing how people perceive the hacker community. So again, thank you guys very much, and enjoy Hack3rcon too.
Thanks, John. All right. Thank you, guys. Give us about 10 minutes and we'll have Chris Silvers and Pat McCoy up here in just a second. Thanks.
Quick announcement.